In the city of Poitiers, France, in a large and elegant house with a well-kept garden and heavy curtains covering the windows, an unimaginable secret lay hidden, a secret that had remained concealed for more than 2 decades, until in May of 1901, an anonymous letter changed the fate of a woman who had been forgotten by the world. Blanche Monnier, a woman who belonged to the French aristocracy of the late 19th century, was born into a respectable family. Her father, the dean of the Faculty of Letters in Poitiers, was a prominent figure in the community. Her brother, Marcel, not only actively participated in various societies and charitable works, but had also served as the sub-prefect of Puget-Théniers. Blanche had lived a privileged life, surrounded by refined education and a distinguished social standing. She was a beautiful young woman with a sweet face and dark hair. Everything suggested that she would have a bright future, fulfilling the destiny that society had reserved for women of her status. But Blanche's heart had other plans. When Blanche, now a grown woman, fell in love with a man who did not meet her mother's social expectations, a woman who believed that only a marriage within their own class was acceptable, things began to take a dark turn. Her mother, Louise Monnier, rejected Blanche's chosen suitor, arguing that he was unworthy of her status and of the noble Monnier family. To her, it was unthinkable that Blanche would throw away the opportunity for a proper marriage with someone of higher rank. Louise Monnier ordered her to end the relationship, but Blanche refused. She was in love and wanted to marry the man she had chosen. And then, overnight, Blanche disappeared. At first, some of her acquaintances asked about her, but her mother's answers were always evasive. It was said that Blanche was ill, that she preferred to be alone, or that she didn't wish to see anyone. And over time, people stopped asking. No one imagined that Blanche was not in voluntary seclusion, but locked away in a tiny room, with the window sealed and the door locked. For 25 years, she lived in absolute solitude, never seeing the sun, never hearing another voice, except that of her mother or her brother. On May 23, 1901, 25 years after Blanche's disappearance, the Paris prosecutor received an anonymous letter containing chilling details about the young woman's fate. The account was so unbelievable that, for a moment, the authorities doubted its authenticity. However, the complaint was written with such precision and desperation that the officers decided to investigate. Dear Attorney General, I have the honour of informing you of a matter of exceptional gravity. It concerns a young lady who is locked in the house of Mrs. Monnier, deprived of food, who has lived among rotting waste for the last 25 years. That is to say, her own excrement. The letter went on to describe the situation in terrifying detail. The complaint stated that Blanche had been held prisoner, isolated from the world, and deprived of basic care, living in a state of absolute misery. The police were unsure of how to handle the complaint. After all, the Monnier family was well known and respected. The widow, Louise Monnier, was a lady of high society, her son Marcel a well-regarded lawyer, and although no one had seen young Blanche in years, everyone assumed she had withdrawn from public life by choice. But something in the letter's desperate tone convinced the officers that they had to act. When they arrived at the house, they were met by Louise Monnier, a stern-looking woman dressed impeccably in black, exuding an air of untouchable dignity. She coldly denied everything, insisting that they had no right to invade her home. But the officers persisted. They went upstairs, where they found a locked door. As they approached, an unbearable stench filled the air, a mix of rot and filth that seemed to seep into the very walls. The woman insisted they had no right to enter, but the police, determined, broke down the door. As it swung open, a nauseating odour flooded the air. According to Le Petit Parisien, when they entered the room, a pestilential stench rose up. What they found on the other side was something none of them could have imagined. The room was small, dark, and filthy. The air was so thick it was almost impossible to breathe. In the dim light, on a rotting mattress, lay a figure that barely seemed human, a skeletal woman covered in rags, her tangled hair so long it draped over her shoulders and back. Blanche Monnier was now a shadow of what she had once been. Her eyes, accustomed to the darkness, clenched shut as the officers opened the windows. Blanche Monnier had not seen sunlight in 25 years. Her skin was pale and sickly, as if it had never been touched by natural light. Her body was nothing but skin and bones. The room was filled with filth, rotting food scraps, human waste, and urine. The mattress she lay on had been reduced to shreds of fabric and layers of grime. When the police tried to interact with her, Blanche could barely move. Her mind had been severely damaged by years of isolation. She had spent 25 years without seeing the sun, speaking only to her mother and a few servants, with no real human contact. The officers tried to dress her, but she reacted with terrified screams, overwhelmed by the presence of so many strangers in her room. Her mind had been shattered by extreme isolation. With the help of the officers, Blanche was carried down the stairs, as her weakened body could no longer support her. She was transported by ambulance to a medical facility. At the hospital, doctors confirmed that there were no signs of bruises or external injuries on her body, indicating that she had not been physically beaten. However, the effects of her long confinement were undeniable. Her mind had been severely damaged by so many years in darkness. When Blanche's case became public, outrage spread rapidly. Louise Monnier was arrested, but she died of a heart attack just 15 days after being taken into custody. Marcel Monnier was brought to trial and sentenced to 15 months in prison. However, he appealed the verdict and was acquitted. The reason? A legal loophole in the French Penal Code. At the time, no specific law existed to punish someone for simply failing to free another person. Additionally, the defense argued that Marcel had an intellectual developmental disorder and had been completely dominated by his mother, incapable of acting on his own. With this argument, he was set free and did not spend a single day in prison. This outraged many who felt that justice had only been partially served and that impunity had prevailed in such a grotesque case. After being rescued, Blanche was admitted to a psychiatric hospital where she received medical care. However, she never fully recovered from the effects of her long captivity. The tragedy of her life had not only destroyed her physically, but had also left a profound mark on her mental health. Some witnesses claimed that after her release, Blanche asked to be returned to her little cave. There is no official documentation to confirm this, but if true, it could be seen as a symptom of the deep trauma caused by her prolonged isolation. After spending 25 years in darkness, surrounded by filth and neglect, the outside world must have seemed terrifying and chaotic to her. Blanche Monnier died in 1913 at the Blois Psychiatric Hospital. Despite being freed and treated with dignity in her final years, she never fully regained her physical or mental health. Her story remains one of the most chilling cases of familial abuse, a tragic reflection of a society that allowed a woman to be erased from the world without question. A woman who was punished for loving the wrong person, whose fate was sealed by the absolute control of her family, and whose story serves as a haunting reminder of the deep scars that abuse leaves, both on the body and the mind.